Guys, today we're going to be making pizza. Specifically pizza crust is kind of the main recipe I'm going to teach you. I'm going to make a simple pizza marguerite or pizza margarita, which is one of the original recipes really. So it's just going to be like an olive oil and kind of garlic glaze. I've got some fresh basil, some sliced up Roma tomato here. I got some cheese over here. We're going to lay that down. But let's start with the crust, okay? Now the first thing we want to do, I'll go through my crust recipe. For the video, I'm going to talk about it in common measurements like cups and teaspoons and tablespoons. But I'll also post it because when you bake bread, when you do yeast activated recipes, you really want to do it by weight, and I'll include that in the description. What I've got here is 3 packed teaspoons of dark brown sugar. The sugar is going to serve as kind of our food for our yeast. You don't have to have this. A lot of original pizza recipes don't use a fat that I'm going to be showing you later, or a sugar. I tend to find it makes it a little bit better. This is how my grandfather used to make it in his pizzeria. He didn't use brown sugar, he used white sugar, but this is kind of marrying. I have another recipe I like that uses molasses. You can use agave, maple syrup I've even seen. I just prefer brown sugar. That's my own unique touch. And then for my fat, I don't actually use olive oil, but we'll get to that in a second. You're going to take... This will make about 4 small pizzas or 2 mediums. This is 3 packed teaspoons of brown sugar, and to that I'm going to add about 1 1/3 cup of hot water. My kettle just came off boiling, so I'm going to measure that out here. I've got my line. And what we have to be careful about is we're going to add yeast to this solution. We're going to let it bloom. So we kind of created a sugar syrup for the yeast to develop, to not only awaken from its slumbered state, but also giving it sugar to feed off of. Now what we need to check with that, with instant live yeast, like what we're using, what you'll generally buy at the store, is it needs to be in between 120 or 130 degrees. I think we're too hot. Yeah, we're going to let that cool off. Well, it looks like we're right below that 130 mark. Whisk it around and double check. Yep, 129.6. That's perfect. This will give us ample time to let the yeast bloom. Now, this isn't something that's absolutely necessary, but I prefer to do it this way. Just because it makes our lives easier. So, for this recipe, we're going to be using 4.5 teaspoons of instant rapid rise yeast. This is a Fleischmann's variety. 4.5 teaspoons. I've got a half teaspoon measure here, so that is 9 teaspoons. If you walk away with anything today, at least you can learn that you did a little bit of math. So, we're just going to whisk this up just a little bit. Try not to get your yeast stuck to your implements. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to start on our crust here. In this bowl right now, you can't see it. All I've got is a pinch of salt. Again, just like the water with the salt, it kind of worked out to, you know, a certain measurement and a pinch. I got a pinch of salt in here. I'm going to add to it 4 cups of flour. The reason I'm adding the flour to the salt is you do not want to add your yeast directly to salt because the salinity will actually kill the yeast once again. The yeast is temperature temperamental, it's salinity temperamental. The yeast is really just a basic bitch and it can't handle a lot of changes to it. So we're going to do 4 cups of just all-purpose flour here, not bread flour, not the high gluten stuff, not OO Italian strength. This is just all-purpose flour. And the reason I'm leaving this out is just to keep my workspace floured. If you're going to use your tabletop or your countertop, make sure I went through this with, you know, some disinfectant wipes, some Clorox wipes. Then I wiped that down too so the flour didn't absorb the chemicals. you want a clean surface, but you want to make sure it's floured and you want a lot of space to work on. So just with your hands, just create a little well in the center. And I'll bring this up to the camera. All I mean by that is just, you've created a little well in the center. You know, you just kind of stuck your hand in the center and worked it around. It moved its way down, but all we're doing is stick your hand in the center and spin it around. You want to create something in the center, and then we're going to try and uniformly mix this. When we introduce the water and the yeast mixture, we're going to go ahead and do it now. We're going to pour it into the well. Once we've done that, we're going to pull from all the sides. So let's go ahead and introduce this bloomed. This is brown sugar, 1 1/3 cup, give or take, of water, and some, what is that? Not 4½ teaspoons of yeast, 4½ teaspoons of instant active Fleischmann's yeast. And pour that in there. And what I kind of learned, because I did a couple trials with this, is, and you really do want to use your hands. Just make sure you have clean hands. You know, I washed my hands before this. There's a consistency, and that's the reason I don't like to do this in a stand mixer. And pizza crust is really important to that. You know, when I make ciabatta or I make bread loaves, I'll do it in a stand mixer because I'm not that worried about it. But with this, I've had pizza crust that I've made in the stand mixer versus making it by hand, and it comes out terrible. I mean, it comes out like fucking pita bread, and you don't want that. You don't want, you know, that chewy and hard of a consistency from your pizza crust. And mixing it by hand just gives you that extra intimacy. It gives you that extra element that you know what the feeling is. You know what the consistency is. And that's really what we're going for here. And I'll kind of describe it as we go. The best way I've heard this is actually from Munchie's Frank Pinello. You want your dough to be mixed well enough, and you want it to be hydrated enough that it doesn't stick to your hands. So I'm just kind of beating mine up here. The water's already taken. It's hydrated most of the flour. The reason I don't add the fat until later, another little pro tip I've learned through my research. When you add flour, or when you add fat or an oil to flour, you actually you decrease the hydrolyzing capability of the flour and the gluten. If you add oil to flour, it's not going to absorb water. It's going to coat it with oil, the little flour, you know, molecules, and then it's not going to be able to actually absorb the water molecules. That's why we wait until we've got a rough dough here. This is shaggy, you know. You know, at the time I made this isn't a 99% power bullshit meme joke. This is just shaggy dough. It's not really consistent.
Like, you only made me use 10% of my
flour
power.
to it. It's still got some edges. It's not a ball or anything. You know, I mean, you can see I'm trying to rub my hands there to get this all off my fingertips. But I am, at this stage, I'm going to go ahead and add in my fat. And also, the most important, well, not the most important, but a very important ingredient, and this can't be ignored, is the salt. Into my, I got 2 tablespoons there of shortening. That's just Crisco vegetable shortening, not butter flavored, just basic shortening. I've got 1 teaspoon of salt. So we're going to grab that. We're going to get this mixed in. The reason I don't add the salt and the fat until later, the fat I already explained, the salt will kill your yeast. Like I kind of said, yeast is a little bit of a basic bitch. You can't add a whole lot of salinity to your mixture. It's all. That's pretty much everything I'm going to get out of there. We're going to throw it in a well-oiled bowl, and in that well-oiled bowl, we're going to leave it out. And you have 2 options here. For this recipe, or for this trial, I should say, I'm going to leave this out at room temperature. I'm going to wait for it to double in size, and I'm going to punch it down. From that point, you can cut this up and make little, you know, dough sizes. If you want to make personal calzones, you want to make a larger pizza, take a bigger hunk. But I'm going to let this double in size, then I'm going to punch it down and make little balls with it. Once I've made those little balls, I can freeze those, or before I've made the little balls, I can actually cold ferment this. That's what I've done with this cheater dough we're going to use. Cold fermenting is actually one of the standards of the pizzeria business. What you do is you retard the yeast rate. you throw your dough after you've mixed it. You know, basically at this point we throw this in an oiled bowl and we put it in the fridge. Cover it with a wet towel so it stays a little hydrated. And you're going to throw that in the fridge and you're going to let the yeast slowly grow. This guy has gotten worked out quite a bit. So all I'm going to do is kind of roll him up into a little bit of a ball here. Okay. Got that pretty well into a ball. It's not sticking to our hands anymore. So what we want to do with this now, we want to oil this bowl up. Get a little bit of extra virgin olive oil here. Just going to take my hand. I'm just going to kind of smear it around the bowl. Make sure the surface is coated. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to take this dough ball here. You know, it's got the flour, it's got a little bit of water on it. If we didn't roll it around in the flour, I'd be telling you to add flour now. Once I get it in the bowl, so that's the only reason I'm kind of rolling it around, just a hair. I don't want to overdo it, I just want to get it a little bit. And then just kind of rock it around a little bit. Flip it over, it's not going to hurt it. Just roll it in that oil. You want to make sure it does not stick to your bowl. There we go, back to its original side. Okay, we got our dough rising now. We're going to let this go until it's about doubled in size. With that being said, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to go ahead and reflour my work surface, because you saw me kind of work that dough out over here. It's taken a lot of the flour off the tabletop. Other thing I'm going to throw down now, just basic yellow cornmeal. What's nice about this is that it not only kind of gives the crust a little bit more texture, but it also, on a microscopic level, it helps bring the crust up off the surface of your baking surface, and it allows a little bit of air to translate through there, but it just creates a general crisper crust. This is our dummy crust. I made this. I actually cold fermented this one. I know I said I was going to warm ferment the dough I made for you guys. This one, and this is just for me to kind of get this perfected. This is the same exact recipe. It's brought down to a quarter size. This is about what you'll make 4 times of. I've let this come out of the fridge. I've let it rehydrate and rewarm for a couple hours now, and I've let it double its size. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take this off. This is going to be our broiling tray. We're going to take that dough off, and we're going to just throw it down here in the cornmeal and the flour mix. Okay, and kind of punch it down a little bit, and then you might get your hands just a hair wet. And this is all dependent upon how dry your crust feels. Mine's got a little bit of a dry surface to it, so I want to reintroduce some water. So you're going to want to try and keep that thick edge on there. You know, when you get pizza, what's it got? It's got an edge to it. It's got a crust. I don't know why I'm sounding more and more Italian. Maybe that's just my genetics. I think it could be fun, huh? Why don't we go that route, hey? Okay, just kind of widen it out. That's your basic method of doing it. I like to kind of stretch it just a hair. Make sure we rub it in all that cornmeal. Get the cornmeal everywhere. And the other way to do this is, of course, you know, the classic. It's what you all think of when you think of pizza. It's people getting the knuckles in there. People getting the knuckles in there, and then they're throwing it. They're throwing it in the air like that. Oh yeah, it's like throwing a frisbee, mate. I don't know why I said mate. That's weird. So, what I got here, I got a little bit of EVOO. I got some chopped up shallots. I got some garlic salt, some fennel seed, crushed red pepper. This is really whatever you want to make it. For a pizza margherita or a pizza margherita, I know that sounds like some sort of crap dish you probably get at Oh, what is it, asshole? Sammy Hagar or oh Jesus fucking Christ. Oh my God, why can't I think of Jimmy Buffett? Oh, there we go. It sounds like a Jimmy Buffett, you know, it's not Hotel California, but it sounds like a Burger in Paradise, you know, margarita parrot head type shit thing. Pizza Margherita is one of the first pizza recipes ever. It's developed actually after Queen Marguerite. I want to say she was either Spanish, maybe Italian. It'd make more sense if it was Italian, but I want to say she's Spanish. Your basic recipe, your basic ingredients here are your cheese, your basil, and your tomato. So whenever you see something that's a margarita variant, it's always got basil, tomato, and some mozzarella. What I do on mine, I like to do a little bit of a white pizza variant, and that does not mean Alfredo sauce. If you put Alfredo sauce on pizza, go fuck yourself. What you do here is I take a little bit of olive oil, I mix it with some garlic. This actually has a little bit of shallots in it. This has some fennel seeds, some salt, pepper. It's got some other herbs and spices. That's really up to you. Really what's integral here is the olive oil and the garlic and the salt and pepper. I'm just going to kind of spoon this on here and make a base. We're not going to do pizza sauce on this pizza. We're just going to do a base of this kind of herbed oil. Try and keep it a little on the thicker side, because what we'll do is we'll take a pastry brush, actually, and we will brush out the edges, just so they get a little nice and gold. I'm going to go ahead and take our cheese here. This is just some shredded mozzarella. You know, nothing too fancy. I'm just going to lay down a nice layer within the crust. Make sure you get that cornmeal on the crust on the bottom side there. All we're going to take next, we got some fresh sliced Roma tomato. We got some little fresh basil leaves here. Then we're going to take our tomato slices, we're going to layer them around the pizza. Okay. Now we're going to take our pastry brush. We're going to brush the crust with a little bit of this oil that's reserved. There are some chunks in it, don't worry about that. Just kind of get it, brush it around. Don't be afraid to dip back in there. And then the other thing we're going to do is we're going to take our spoon here. We're going to drizzle this. You know, if I didn't have the extra leftover oil, I'd be taking my olive oil bottle and I'd be just hitting the pizza itself. I don't have that, so I'm doing this, you know. I'm going to throw this on the pizza stone now. It will not take too long before it's cooked. That's the beauty of this. So what we've done here, we've taken our pizza crust out of the oven. As you can see, she is quite beautiful. Our pizza margherita. We got those raw Roma tomato slices. We got that basil leaf on there, the fresh torn basil leaf. We got the fresh mozzarella and the Parmesan on there. This is going to be a great pizza. That's real hot. Oh my God, that fucking burns. I will catch you next episode, eh? Yeah.